Thank you for this great presentation. Our next speaker, and the last but not least in today's workshop, Dr. Malak Al Nory. She is from Effat University in Jeddah, Saudi Arabia. And she works also with Steve Graves here at MIT. And she will continue in the presentation on desalination, looking more on modeling, optimization, and more specifically on supply chain aspects associated with them. Yeah, Dr. Malak.
Well, thank you, Dr. Kamal, for the introduction. And I should also thank Noura, because she just gave the background for the work, so I can skip all that now. I'm Malak Al Nory. I'm working with Professor Steve Graves from Engineering Systems Division. My work is basically focused on modeling the water desalination network as a supply chain. The main idea is that we can benefit from existing models in the supply chain theories and the different theories into to be able to optimize the performance of the desalination supply chain. So for the first time, looking at the desalination industry network as from supply chain perspective. These are the areas that I looked at in my fellowship. By the way, I'm the last speaker, but I'm the first Ibn Khaldun Fellow. I started in September 2012, so basically I'm in my third year now. I looked at the water desalination supply chain modeling. That was the proposal of the main idea. And this work was discussed in IEEE International Conference on Data Engineering in Brisbane, Australia. Also, I looked at the application on the case of Saudi Arabia, and that was discussed in International Desalination Association World Congress in Tianjin, China, and IDA, also Journal of Desalination and Water Reuse. And then we proposed a methodology for decision makers in desalination. And this was published recently in the Desalination Journal in Elsevier, this August. And the last area that I worked on is desalination for interrupted supply from renewable energy. That was my work during this past year. Initially, the work has been discussed in Saudi Arabia Smart Grid and Green Energy Conference, and then extended model proposed in the Renewable Energy Elsevier Journal, available online, but the publication date is December 2014. And I will be presenting an extended model in November and next month in IEEE International Conference on Tools with Artificial Intelligence. So I'll first start by talking about the first three areas, which is the main idea. Mainly in desalination projects, there are many strategic decision alternatives that need to take place when we first start to establish the desalination plants. In terms of what is the technology need to be used, what is the energy source that need to be implemented, what is the capacity that need to be installed, which geographic location, and many other technical also decisions related to the design of the plant and the operations of the plant, how much should we produce, also the network structure, how should it be, and how can we use it, and what are the quantities that should be pushed through the network. Specifically in large-scale desalination projects, there are many different components that we need to look at in order to create system designs. Now, viewing the desalination network as a supply chain allows us to optimize at a system level, at the global level, rather than just looking at optimized performance for a specific unit or a specific plant. So we can, this way we can basically find or perform multiple objectives models and multiple purpose, possibly looking at cogeneration of water and power, and looking at a multi-facility planning approach. And this should allow us to provide solutions that not just technically feasible, but also environmentally, socially, politically, and economically as well. Of the network is the distribution system. So now we have the structure of the industry of desalination. We also need to add the parameters relating to the technical aspect and environmental aspects. For example, we looked at the capacity factor, and we modeled that into the network model. We looked at the energy consumption as well, thermal versus the electrical consumption for the different desalination technologies. We looked at the airborne emissions, CO2, and the different airborne emissions by different desalination technologies, as we can see here. And we created a way so we can scale or give a score for each desalination network design. And this score is based on the amount of the reduction that we can achieve by using renewable energy instead of the conventional desalination technology for each of the components. Initially, we created a programming interface so that based on Java programming, so the user can compose that desalination network visually by simply pulling these Java classes, which represent the desalination units, the material, the different nodes, and these can be translated into, visually can be translated into Java code, and then using specific compiler, it can be translated into mathematical model, and then can be solved on mathematical solvers. Then the user can obtain optimal solutions for their specific suggested design. From the initial analysis that we have done using that previous modeling components and the network model, we obtained these results, which is basically what is the optimal flow of desalinated water given the existing desalination capacity and the existing network in the country and the demand in the different 13 regions of the country. Where should the flow go? So you can see that the striped areas here that should receive flow and the other areas should not possibly receive flow. They rather should use other types of water resource because it's not feasible or not economically optimal to receive it here. And we looked at we did analysis at the average cost of producing 1 cubic meter of water, which is $1.07 overall as an average. And this might seem efficient, but this, however, includes lots of subsidized prices for fuel. So this would be misleading. But by looking at the energy consumption, which is on average is 17 kilowatt hour to produce 1 cubic meter, shows, and comparing this to the 0.7 theoretical thermodynamics shows that this is an efficient operation. Basically, because we in Saudi Arabia mainly they use the MSF and MID, the thermal processes. We extended that network model into more elaborate optimization model with mainly 4 decision variables. Includes the amount of water that needs to be produced by specific technology at certain location in a certain time in the horizon, and the number of units should be installed from this technology in this location. So if the number of units is 0, then this technology should not be installed at this location. Also, the amount of flow on a specific arc at the specific time in the horizon, and the number of flows. Also different parameters. I don't want to go through all these, but mainly the design capacities and the capacity factor for the desalination technologies. We also used constraints to specify the other important aspects of the problem. We looked at the net present value of the CAPEX, which is the capital cost, and the OPEX, the operational cost. Also, the residual value of a plant after the end of the planning horizon. So the depreciation of the land and the equipment and so on, to obtain the total cost of a plant with certain technology at certain location. We also looked at the NPV of CAPEX and OPEX of the network structure to obtain the total cost of the investment in the network. We also have constraints to represent the environmental impact of certain technologies installed and certain production levels. The objective function then is to minimize the total cost of both the investment in the desalination plants and the network as well. Subject to additional constraints of capacity factors and demand, meeting the demand network structure and the capacity of the network, and upper limit of airborne emissions from the technology. Now, we applied this on a case study of Saudi Arabia, of course. We started by looking at the different desalination options in Saudi Arabia, and then we all from going through the literature and then shortlisting these into these options from the literature and by consulting with a expert. We see here that the shortlisted technologies that's suitable for Saudi Arabia, based on the existing ones and the literature review and the expert opinion, are the MSF cogeneration, MED cogeneration, MED solar thermal, RO steam cycle, RO with internal combustion engine, RO with combined cycle, and RO PV. Given the optimization model that we created and the methodology that we also proposed, we assume that the decision makers will look at two quantitative metrics. So decision makers can basically use one or more of quantitative metrics or performance measure of the specific structure of the desalination network. So we assume that they are interested mainly in the levelized water cost, and second in the levelized environmental impact. We also give the mean for the decision maker in which they can add qualitative metrics, as long as it can be represented as additional constraint to the optimization model. So we assumed here that the qualitative metric is that since the Khafji location, as Nora mentioned in her talk, that the proposed location for the solar desalination, so we'll fix that this location, we will have this specific technology with this specific capacity and see what happens. We assume two scenarios. The first one is without considering the current infrastructure, so assuming that we're starting building the desalination network from scratch. And scenario 2 is considering the current infrastructure. Using existing capacity, existing network, what should we add to it? And looked at different planning horizons, starting from 5 to 25 years of operation, and assuming the first year is a construction year. These are the results we obtained from running the desalination network models. Basically, the table here shows all the different time horizons and the optimized or minimized objective cost versus emission. So we run the model to optimize the cost, and then to optimize the emissions, and see what is the impact on the levelized environmental levelized water cost and levelized environmental impact. And we look at what's the specific cost and what's the specific emissions. Basically, each run of the optimization model is a point in this decision graph. And this is something that we proposed along with the methodology, a Pareto optimal graph. So visually, the decision maker can look at the results of all the optimization runs. So each point here basically represents a specific configuration of the desalination network. So it includes, it would specify what technologies should be installed in which locations at which capacities in the country. And each of the curve represents one horizon. So this is the 5 years, 10 years, 20 years, and 25 years. By looking at the graph visually, the decision maker can easily define what is the most optimal for them, because it depends. The decision maker might decide to go with the optimized emissions. So they would like to have the minimum impact no matter what is the cost. But in general, what we thought that the decision maker would probably choose between these 2 points, because they have both the minimum, a low environmental impact, which is here on the x-axis, and a low cost. And this is represented by the 20 years horizon curve. In the second case, where we consider the current infrastructure, then we have also performed the same analysis, and the curves here overlap a lot, but this seemed to be a winning point where the decision maker can achieve in the 25 years horizon possibly the lowest cost, lowest levelized water cost with the lowest levelized environmental impact. And we also use GIS implementation also to show the decision maker the visualized view of the solutions on the map of the country. Now, overall, we looked at all the cost minimizing options versus the emissions minimizing options from all the points on the graphs, on the Pareto optimal graphs that we looked at. And we obtained some results. For example, MSF is no longer an option. It is not economically feasible anymore. It's expensive. MED is more suitable for the East Coast than the West Coast, where membrane is more suitable for the West Coast. Gulf plants, which is the East Coast plants in general, have higher levelized water cost. Ras Al Khair, this is an interesting result that does not contribute to the optimal solution to either scenarios because of the very high cost of transmission. This is the most recent plant, and it seems that the operations and the construction is very high cost. On the emission and minimizing options, ROPV seems in all locations for all planning horizons periods, it was the technology for choice. The ROPV installations might result for the highest investments though, because of the technology is not mature for the large scales. The second area that I would just probably give a brief idea about which is using desalination for interrupted supply from renewable energy. Basically, the idea is that because of the increase of the use of renewable energy and the increase of the share of renewable energy sources in the market and in the electricity grid, with that increased portfolio, especially if it's as high as 40% or more, this will create interruption of the because of the interruption of the supply. It will create challenges and critical situation for the grid. The variation of the supply from the renewable energy, whether wind or solar, will affect the operations of the grid as well. And this requires the use of storage technologies. Mainly batteries can be used. However, batteries still very expensive or not durable as we wish. Other technologies for storage can be used. For example, the pump hydro storage technology, which is basically accumulating water at an upper basin, and then during the off-peak hours, and then releasing that water when there is high during the peak hours. Our idea is to use the desalination capacity, specifically the storage capacity as desalination, as a deferrable load for to mitigate the supply from the interruption of the supply from the renewable sources. So, as you can see here in this graph, the desalination plants, the storage tanks of the desalination plants can be used in order to store water instead of storing energy. So become like batteries, where when the interruption happens from renewable energy, then the desalination plants can use the stored water instead of consuming additional energy from the smart grid, from the electricity grid. To achieve this, we look at we created a model that looks at the production levels of desalination plants, the storage level at the storage tanks, and in addition to the power generation at the power plant. So assuming that one authority is similar to the case in Saudi Arabia, is responsible about both the desalination and the power generation. These are the model parameters. These are the decision variables, the quantities produced by desalination plants at certain time, amount of water pushed through the distribution network, and the water that used directly from the desalination plant to satisfy the demand, and the amount of electricity generated by all power plants. Objective function, again minimizing the operational and management cost of desalination, of storage, and power production, and subject to set of constraints. I think I focus here on those are the most interesting constraints, which deal with the renewable energy source. So in case of if we don't have interruption from the renewable energy and we have the maximum provided by the renewable energy source, then given that the typical or regular production should satisfy the total demand on electricity production. In case of interruption, then these two constraints apply. Interruption from solar or from any type of renewable energy. If the power production at the power plants is at the maximum, then this constraint will be applied. If it's not at the maximum, then this constraint would be applied, which is basically saying that we can increase or ramp up the generation at the power plant by a delta amount of generation. Because it's not possible for power plants to ramp up the generation at the highest level. They can only generate for the next time period at a certain level. We looked at planning horizon of 24 hours, and we looked at the current desalination capacity in the country and the current demand. Okay. We looked at also a profile of the peak load in Riyadh, which is the capital of the country. I think this day was one day in September, which might be representable to the other days in the year because of little seasonal variation in the country, or in Riyadh specifically. We also looked at the proposed energy mix by CACARE, which advertises 50, which is the main body for the renewable energy plants in Saudi Arabia. We assume that we have a maximum 1 gigawatt, since we don't have actually right now any serious implementation of renewable energy sources. Initial results show that, so we ran for the 24 hours, the renewable supply here follow a normal curve, with the peak being at the midday. So you can see here, even the minimum and the maximum, they go to follow the same normal curve. The costs are affected actually by the peak load. So if the peak load is in between the normal peak load, between 25,000 to 30,000, then it is normal. We have a specific cost. If the peak load is lower or higher than the normal, then the prices the costs are different. And here, this table shows the how the desalination plant, the production at the desalination plant, reflecting the changes of with the peak load, and how also the power generation varies over the 24 hours period, and what is the electricity released back from the desalination plants to the grid. In this table, we look at only the hours that had electricity released to analyze each of these released. Some of these released are not preferable, especially if the peak load is low already, so it causes additional, lowers it more, or it is not needed anyway, so it does not have any value. But some are needed when the peak load is high, so to minimize the load on the grid. So careful loss gain analysis is needed. Also, it is important to mention that electricity release happens in the periods where the supply from renewable energy sources is likely to be lower than its maximum. So this is says that this release would be advantageous for the electricity grid operations. We're planning to extend the mathematical model to reflect the fact that power generation is less economically efficient when operating at minimum or maximum capacity, which is the more than the higher load or lower than the lower load. So finding the sweet spot. Investigating optimal investment also, such that we achieve the maximum return on investment of desalination plants with the production of renewable sources over time, and the optimal portfolio of renewable sources such that the interruption is minimized. We also would like to look at analyzing the investment in desalination to compensate for power generation when demand fluctuates for very limited time, which is the capacity mitigations. For future work also, as Noura mentioned, I'm looking at optimal solar desalination networks. So just focusing on what is the suitable technology for solar desalination in Saudi Arabia, and providing a techno-economic evaluation for the entire network. Hopefully we'll be able to put this out for the IDA World Congress in September 2015 in San Diego. And thank you for your attendance, and thank you for being here for my talk. I'd like to thank Center for Clean Water and Clean Energy, everybody, and Effat University for giving me the sabbatical leave and an opportunity to be here, and for the KFUPM, and for this fellowship has transformed, I think, not just me, but many of the ladies that I saw today. I think it gave us the opportunity to find our true passion and true research directions. Thank you very much.